Tonight's main news. Workers at Britain's last deep coal mine have ended their final shift, marking the end of an industry which once employed more than 1 million men. Miners said they'd lost not just an industry, but an entire community and a way of life. Well, joining me now from Kellingley Colliery is the performance poet Matt Abbott, and with me here is Louise Distras, a singer-songwriter. Both come from mining families in Yorkshire. Welcome to you both. Let me start with you, Matt. I mean, the loss of a community, the loss of a way of life, is that how you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. It's for symbolism of it. It's for financial aspect. It's for personal aspect. It's the waves go so far through the community. You don't really realise. I mean, obviously we've had 450 jobs, but you know the knock-on effect. 4 people in a family, that's 1,800 people, and it's been happening for 30 years. You know, this is the last in a long line of communities that have been destroyed, really, and it's a very sad day. And
apparently, you've written a poem about the closing of the colliery today. Can you read us a few lines?
Yeah, sure. During the mining strike in the 70s, they sent in all these coppers, shipped in from Nottingham or London or somewhere else irrelevant. And as a deputy, my granddad could only watch as they taunted the picketing miners, wafting notes that floated on laughter as though they were poking a caged-up animal. As though they were poking a caged-up animal. It was so much more than a job. It was so much more than a career. It was his pride, his honour, his livelihood and his community.
OK, great. Thanks for that. Louise, let me turn to you. I mean, those words resonate with you, don't they?
Yes, definitely. And I agree with Matt and what he said about the feeling of being indoctrinated into those feelings of hopelessness and frustration growing up in the north of England. I mean, myself and Matt, you know, we grew up in the aftermath of the decimation of the British industry of manufacturing, but also the decimation of northern communities. Mm-hmm. And obviously, those feelings of frustration and alienation from the government and hopelessness is something that's provided a backbone for our poetry and our music.
But we wouldn't be remembering or mourning mining as we do today if it hadn't been for that history of political strife. I mean, that's so much part of it, isn't it? It made it much more existential, much more dramatic, much more exciting.
Yeah, I suppose so. But I mean, you know, a lot of young people, especially up north, I feel like they don't necessarily see it from a political point of view. You know, there's a lot of young people who feel like that these issues don't affect them. But I mean, when you look at the government statistics, you know, in the northeast of England, we've got the highest unemployment rate in the entirety of the UK, which is obviously you know, a huge issue. And, you know, with Kellingley Colliery closing today and, you know, 800 honest, hard-working people are losing their generational jobs, you know, I feel like it's just going to result in, you know, young people like myself and Matt just continuing to feel, you know, like there is no future or prospects.
But wasn't it also time to move on just in economic terms and environmental terms? I mean, coal was this year declared in the Paris conference just a few weeks ago, you know, the dirty fuel, the enemy of the environment. Do you buy that argument at all?
Yeah, I feel like it is time for a change for us to start using, you know, more sustainable and renewable energy sources. But as part of that, you know, I feel like we do need to sort of deal with our communities first and foremost with what's happening at home.
Right. Matt, let me turn to you. I mean, you're a poet, but would you have become a miner yourself?
Well, my dad was a miner and his dad was a miner.
But
so
would you have been a miner?
Yeah, probably would. And yeah, I probably would if I'd have been born when my dad was born, absolutely. And to be honest with you, I'm grateful that I never went work down a pit because it sounds like it was a very dangerous, a very dirty, a very unforgiving job. And I think that's one of the reasons why it rankles, because, you know, it's a very noble career, it was a very noble profession, and it just feels like they're being treated horrifically. And just to point on coal being bad for the environment, I wouldn't argue that it's not, but the fact is coal is still being burnt 7 miles down the road in Selby. It's just that they're getting the coal from abroad because it's cheaper. And I think it's things like that really rankle, because it just feels like the people in these communities are being put at the very, very bottom of the line and treated terribly.
But do you think if most miners were given the chance to have a well-paid job, but in a safer industry, surely they would opt to do that rather than go down a coal mine?
Nowadays, yeah. I think nowadays they probably would, but I think today is the end of an era in which mining has been systematically forced out over the last 30 years, some would say through political agenda. And I think it's a lot of people, like when my dad went into mining, didn't have a choice, and it was more than a job, it was being part of a community. And obviously now, you know, I've got the luxury of being a poet. Compared to being a miner, it's not even a job, is it? Nowadays it's different, but I think historically the shockwaves are still being felt, and the fact that there are less employment opportunities is as a result of the mining industry being so rashly closed down so quickly and so forcibly. It's not been phased out. It was ground down, you know.
Okay, I'm afraid we've run out of time. We've got to leave it there. Matt Abbott, thank you very much. Louise Distras, thanks for coming into the studio.
Thanks very much.